Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. So we are in the throes of a conversation with the National Advisory Committee on Constitutional Reform. Specifically, we have with us Dr. Terence Farrell, and we're speaking about the community outreach meetings that are happening across Trinidad and Tobago, starting with the town hall meeting today. And we're really going to focus on the interest that has been displayed thus far and why this is necessary. Good morning, Dr. Farrell.
Good morning, Natasha. Nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you this morning?
Very good, thank you.
Wonderful. So tell me something. The first one is happening today, Tuesday, the 2nd of April at Sangre Grande. What has the feedback been like thus far as we go forward?
Well, we actually started operations sort of like early March, getting ourselves set up and so on. And basically we started off by getting the website up and getting the email going, because I think in today's world, most people are communicating by email.
Yeah.
So that has been going, I think, pretty well. I think to date we have over 125 submissions via email, which of course is the easier thing to do now. But we've decided we will have the town hall meetings throughout selected locations in Trinidad and in Tobago. We're having 2 in Tobago and we're having about 10 in Trinidad. Most of them will be during the month of April.
Okay.
We are doing Sangre Grande this afternoon, we are doing Point Fortin tomorrow, and we are doing Port of Spain Town Hall on Friday. So those will be 3. And then we have some others lined up for the other weeks of April. And the reason why we're having the town halls is that we want to give an opportunity for people who may not be into emailing. So, for example, older people who may not be familiar or comfortable with using email and so on, but and also want to come and actually express their thoughts to us about constitutional reform or about the issues that they're having in their community, which actually do relate to the Constitution and to constitutional reform. So the town halls are an opportunity for people to come out and to voice their thoughts, to perhaps elaborate on some of the things that are concerning them about the country, about politics, about the Constitution.
Now, that's something that's so important, because really the first thing that comes to mind, especially when you hear individuals talking as well, you know, I'm not sure if I go into that because at the end of the day, I'm not sure if my voice really matters and what I have to say, because you automatically assume just looking at the Constitution as this body of law, this body of governance. So let's talk about why it is so important that people attend these meetings.
Well, it's important because, number one, you're quite right, people need to give voice. We're in a democracy. A democracy, typically, we vote every 5 years for a government, and at the end of that, the government runs the place for 5 years. But this is an opportunity for now for people to kind of step back, to reflect. The constitution that we've been operating in Trinidad now has been the 1976 constitution, which is the Republican Constitution. That had been initiated by a commission which was called the Wooding Commission, which reported in 1974. But many of the recommendations from the Wooding Commission were not accepted or incorporated into the 1976 Constitution. After that, you had the Hayatali Commission, which was in 1988. That was interrupted by the attempted coup. Then we had a number of different legislation done during the Pandey administration. He didn't have a Constitutional Reform Committee, but there were significant pieces of legislation done in that period: Freedom of Information Act, Judicial Review Act, the Integrity in Public Life Act, which have constitutional implications. Then, interestingly, in 2006, a group of businessmen called the Principles of Fairness Committee, they drafted a constitution. Then in 2009, I think Prime Minister Manning had Ellis Clark do another constitution. And then in 2013, the UN and the UNC, People's Party Government, there was another committee, the Ramadan Committee, which again also came forward with reform. So this is the 5th incarnation, if you like, of committees trying to initiate reform of the Constitution. And what I think it says to us is that we have recognized that there has been a need for change in the Constitution for a long, long time. The society is evolving. We are changing demographically. The population is getting older. Of course, we've had an increase in crime and so on in society. The values in the society are beginning to change. And so therefore, we need to reflect that in the supreme law, which is what the Constitution is, of the country. The supreme law, the Constitution, sets up many of these institutions that we have: the judiciary, the parliament, the cabinet, the ombudsman, the integrity commission, all of these critical institutions, the service commissions, police service commission and so on. These critical institutions are established in the Constitution. And certainly, if I may express my own view,
Of course.
many of these institutions are not working, and they're not working well. And therefore, there is a need for us to begin to look at reform.
And this is the reason why it is so important. It's
Yep.
fantastic to see this. Now, you just said this is the 5th iteration,
Yes.
for want of a better expression. Now, is it that perhaps the advisory committee now, you're going to go out, you are going to hear what the people have to say, you're also, of course, going to receive these online submissions, work on those together, review, put something forward. Would you also take into consideration what has been put forward with the past 5 iterations?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So one of the things that makes our task a little bit easier is precisely because we have the reports of those previous efforts. Excellent recommendations out of Wooding, out of Hayat Ali, out of Principles of Fairness, out of Ellis Clark, out of the Ramada Committee. So we have all of that material, and they also went out and they met with the people. So we have that advantage. In addition to the sort of public outreach, we are also meeting with experts.
Right.
These are people who are very familiar with constitutional law. We're meeting with judges, we're meeting with senior attorneys, we're meeting with academics and so on. And we're also meeting with people involved in social psychology who to help us understand things like anger and violence and so on that is taking place in the society, because we need to reflect. A new constitution needs to reflect the values of the society. And so therefore talking to people like that is going to be important in terms of shaping the recommendations that we put forward.
And that's why it's also so important that the public takes part as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah?
yes.
And now, you mentioned, of course, we've spoken about the online submissions. We have the in-person town hall meetings
Yes.
coming out. Now, how are these navigated? Because advent of social media and so much more. Many times when we see these town hall meetings, they tend to turn a bit more into this is my soapbox and this is what I have to say, which, don't get me wrong, can
Yes.
work because you want to know what the issues
Yes.
are to be able to work them out. But how are you able to sort of keep that balance to say, all right, this is for reform, we want to hear what you have to say, but we want you to push forward with the intention of transforming for tomorrow?
Well, the thing about it is, the way I look at it anyway, is that people articulate things that are affecting them in their
Right.
communities. And one of the things that I think is important to get across to people is that the things that are affecting them in their communities actually do relate back to the Constitution. Because if your roads are not being fixed, if you're not getting water, if you're not, your lights are going out, if there's crime in your neighborhood, these things actually relate back to institutions in the Constitution which are not working well. And it's important for people to be able to see that, and so therefore to see that there's a need for changing the Constitution in order to make our institutions work a little bit better.
Okay, so Dr. Farrell, when the submissions close, when the town hall meetings are over, what is the next step for the committee?
Well, essentially it will be to put together the report and recommendations for to take forward. The committee was set up by Cabinet, but constitutional reform, importantly, is not I suppose I have to use words very carefully here. It's not a government initiative. It has to be a people initiative.
Yeah.
And so therefore the recommendations that we are going to be making, part of the recommendations will concern what will be the next steps once the report has been taken forward. And typically what happens in most countries is that you have something which is called a constitutional convention or a constituent assembly, which brings together people from all over society, not only the political parties, but people from civil society and so on. And you can talk through the recommendations, and you can then come up with a set of proposals that will go forward to the Parliament, and then Parliament can adopt them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because many times we've heard whispers about it, depending on how informed you may not be, speaking about the previous iterations that happened.
Yes.
And some people say, well, we heard that before, and we didn't see anything happen.
Nothing happened,
So
yes,
what's the
yes.
point? So this time now, it's far more, let's say, transparent, and giving that space for people to submit as well, because we've seen the campaign
Yes.
started and being shared. Now, you
Right.
mentioned that you've seen online submissions coming in.
Yes.
When do online submissions close? Is that something you can share with us?
We said April the 15th,
Okay.
but I think we are very flexible with that. A lot of the submissions are very simple, very easy to read. Some people kind of give me a one-liner. Let's let's have an executive president and so on, and that's perfectly fine, because I think that helps us to understand what people are thinking. So I expect that certainly by the end of the process, we will probably have well over 300 emailed in submissions. We will have expert submissions that are coming in. We have asked all the office holders in the Constitution, that is people who hold constitutional office, to send us submissions. We have asked all of the senior counsel, that is all of the senior attorneys in the country, to please, if they so wish, to send us submissions as to what they think should happen. And basically, we've asked everybody. Anybody who wants to write in, emailing is very easy. Engagement is easy. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, on social media, and of course, we are doing the traditional media stuff and so on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And it's great that you are, and we look forward to seeing, well, hopefully you can come back and we can speak about how it's gone.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we wrap this conversation, I feel like we wish we had more time, but we are going to have you back at some point in time, Dr. Farrell. Is
Yes.
there anything in closing you would like to share with the nation when it comes to constitutional reform?
Well, I think it's extremely important that people participate. I understand that people are going to be a bit skeptical, they maybe even be cynical about the initiative. But the fact that this is the 5th time that we are doing this is indicative to my mind that there is a need, that there is a definite need for us to change the way in which we govern ourselves as a society, because things are not going in the way that I think many of us would like.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Farrell.
Yes.
And all the best this evening, and
Thank
the best
you
of
very
the upcoming town halls and the upcoming submissions as well. There's
Yes,
definitely
indeed.
going to be a lot to go through.
Indeed. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Dr. Terence Farrell, National Advisory Committee on Constitutional Reform, joining us this morning. Make sure that you take the time to go out this evening to Sangre Grande. It's happening at 6 p.m. And stay tuned to all of the social media platforms to see how you can contribute to constitutional reform in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be back right after this break.